sometimes entrepreneurship is more about the mindset of the entrepreneur instead of the technical skill that he possesses. How do you see yourself evolve in the future?
Oh, my dream has always been to get the Nobel Prize.
Why?
Yeah, we have to go for the best.
Okay.
I'm not afraid of failure.
Hello, and welcome to Leaders and Strategists. I'm your host, Anicet Fangwa, professor in strategy at McGill Faculty of Management. Today, I have the privilege to engage with Professor Tantoh Ndinteh. Derek is a full prof in organic chemistry at the University of Johannesburg. With him, I would like to discuss his background and values as the son of world-renowned Professor Zacharias Tannee Fomum, his research findings, and most importantly, the complexity of translating academic findings into market-ready enterprises. Welcome, Derek. I wanted to start the conversation by asking a little bit more about your background. You have this very inspiring journey from Cameroon, and now you are a full prof in University of Johannesburg in South Africa. Can you walk us through some of the key steps in that career path?
Well, it's great to be here, Anise, and thanks for having me. I don't know if my story is very inspiring, but I did work a journey. When I was young, I planned to be a pilot. It was either being a pilot or a medical doctor. Already my mom was a national inspector of chemistry. I have a bit of a sad story, if I can put it, that my biological dad was not really there. We were, as a family, in the US, and then my mom went back to start her job at home, and my biological father kind of just stayed away and didn't pitch.
Okay.
But that was a blessing in disguise because I got adopted by Professor Zacharias Tannee Fomum. So my mom was a national inspector of chemistry in the Ministry of Education in Cameroon, and my dad, Professor Fomum, was my adoptive dad from very young, was a professor of organic chemistry. So I kind of was I think I was a good student.
Okay.
I got bored very fast because I seemed to catch things fast. So in class, I got kind of bored quickly.
Okay.
But I always did well. So when I was in primary school, 2 terms out of 3, I was first of the class. But when I got to, I was also a Christian. So I had a lot of moral values. I am a Christian. So moral values were very important to me. My dad was a Christian. My mom was a Christian, and moral values were an environment in which you grew. But at some point in my life, I revolted against all of that. I'm like, what is this? And I really lost it. That was in the Cameroon system from 4.
From 4,
I was about 16, and I went wild, I tried drugs, I tried alcohol, I gambled, I dodged. Actually, from lower seats and upper seats, I don't think I attended a total of 50 lectures.
From the good student with high grades to a rebel not attending class.
I was just not attending classes. I barely made it from one class to the next. But in high school, just before I wrote the A-level, my dad, Professor Fomum, sent myself and my junior brother.
The A-level being the high school diploma in Cameroon, in the English section.
Yeah, in the English section to get into university. It's the British system.
Okay.
So at that level, my dad sent me on a study retreat for 6 weeks. And the only thing I did was answer past questions because I had no notes. But luckily for me, my brother, Stephen Fomum, was the same class with me, and he had notes. So I would read the question and look for the answers in his notes or in the textbooks. And by that initiative, I I passed.
You barely made it from what I learned.
Yeah. I wrote 4 papers, math, physics, biology, and chemistry. I had what they call a complementary in physics, which means you almost passed, but you didn't make it. I had decent grades in chemistry, math, and biology.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went into the university.
I'm sorry to interrupt there, but that's very fascinating because from barely making it in the high school diploma, you are now a full prof in organic chemistry. What happened between the two?
Well, the major thing is that I realized that the life of a vagabond doesn't pay.
Okay.
The life of a vagabond doesn't pay. Simply, I decided to come back to my Christian values, to what I call a relationship with God, and I started working hard. Somehow, one of the things that was my biggest motivation was that I wanted my dad to be happy and my mom.
He being a professor himself.
Yeah, he was a professor of organic chemistry. I wanted him to be happy. I really wanted him to be happy. That's one of my biggest motivations. A well done from him was more than $1 billion. Like really, that's the big motivation. At some point, I thought of becoming a medical doctor, so I thought of writing the medical, but I have very low tolerance for human harm. Even a baby is choking near me, I panic.
Okay.
So I was quickly brought to the realization you can't do this. So the only option for me was, the closest to me was chemistry and kind of medicinal chemistry. So discovering new drugs and looking for new therapies, which was what my father was into. He did natural product chemistry. So he does biomining, goes into traditional plants that are used and looks for, like, by the way, over 60% of all of the medications that are in the pharmaceutical space today are from naturally occurring molecules or inspired by them or slight modifications. And the rest are from synthetic roots that they're made by we, the researchers, with some biological activity. A lot of what is out there is from naturally occurring sources. So that's more or less what we were doing with the biomining. The mining companies mine for gold, mine for diamond, mine for precious metals. We mine for biological molecules that have unique properties. So we discover new compounds. So that's what my dad was doing. And that was just a natural thing for me to work with my dad and become a great chemist. Yeah. So that's more or less how I found myself doing chemistry.
And is there a particular reason why you landed in UJ in Johannesburg?
Okay. This brings a second person in my life, Professor Rui Krause. My dad had met him. He was a young researcher at the University of Johannesburg. He had met my dad at a conference, but he didn't tell me. It's only when my dad had passed on that he told me. And Professor Krause, and it's still very emotional for me, passed on about 4 months ago. He was 54. But he was the one my dad wanted me. In Cameroon, we don't have access to any good equipment. So you normally either send your compounds to the West or to Asia to get them analyzed, things like nuclear magnetic resonance. But then my dad wanted me to come to South Africa. So he wrote to Professor Krause, and Professor Krause graciously accepted to host myself and my brother Stephen Fomum. And that is how we went for a 3-month exchange visit. But in the meantime, when the trip was finalized, my dad passed on. I think that's what made me stay, because if he were alive, there's no way I would be in Johannesburg.
You have
gone back to Cameroon.
To work with him?
Yeah, to work with him. But then Professor Krause turned out to be a blessing in disguise, because he became like a big brother to me. He invited me for another 3 months, covered all the costs. And even before I finished I had defended my PhD thesis, he offered me a postdoc.
Okay.
So I had a postdoc before I had a PhD, which is weird.
It was interesting,
Yeah.
indeed.
But he really wanted to keep me. That's how much. So I got a postdoc before I got a PhD. I'd finished my research. I'd done my thesis, and I had a PhD.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
and then how does it translate into you being a full prof, and what happened in between those?
Now, what happened was when he invited me back for a PhD, by then I was married.
Okay.
And I told him I cannot come back here without my wife and my kid. That's not going to happen. And he paid everything.
Okay.
And I started working with him. The thing is, my dad taught me something called hard work. My dad was an extreme hard worker, Professor Fomum. In the days when papers were still typed with typing machines. I don't think the modern kids know what a typing machine was. And where one mistake meant you had to pull it out and tear it and
redo completely.
And where you wrote your thesis with your hand and then you paid somebody to type it for you because, I mean, typing machines were not, and then you had to have skill. They were skilled typists. But for him to have published over 150 articles, supervised over 100 postgraduate students, many of whom were full professors, and published hundreds of articles, he was a great inspiration for me. So I came from a context of very hard work. And apart from that, he wrote over 150 to 200 books on the Christian faith. So as a scientist, he published over 150 articles, both in organic synthesis and in natural products, chemistry. So he was an extreme hard worker, and I watched him work. So I just learned the habit. I don't consider myself yet to be a very hard worker, but I think I do pretty well.
Do you have a figure or a number of articles to actually back up your claim about hard work?
Yeah, I have done close to 200 articles in international journals of repute, and I've supervised over 250. I've been involved in the supervision of over 50 master's and PhD students.
Okay.
Yeah, as a co-supervisor or supervisor. But it started because Professor Krause, my PhD host and postdoc host, when he saw my work ethic, he was always surprised because he will come to the lab at 6 or 7 and he'll find me there and he will notice I was there till late.
Okay.
We just had the habit. During my PhD years, I was very divided between many activities, my academics and other personal activities. So sometimes my work in the lab was kind of neither here nor there. But at some point, my supervisor gave me a very stern warning. And after he gave me that warning, I went and I stayed in the lab for 2 weeks.
Okay.
As I lived in the lab. I was just walking. I'll bathe in the morning when nobody's there. And then I just stayed in the lab for 2 weeks without going home. But after that, so that's why I'm just bringing the part of the hard work ethic, the work ethic that we learned from our dad. So when we came to University of Johannesburg, we were in the lab early and we were there through. I just stopped going to the lab recently when I became when I became a full professor, and then you have to do a lot more admin than. But even while I was a senior lecturer or an associate professor, I had my own projects I was running in the lab. So we learned to work hard. And when Professor Krause saw my work ethic, he just started involving me in co-supervision with him.
Okay.
Because he had a big research group. And so that's how I became a postdoc. And then there was an American company called LICO, Africa, that came to, they had an expert who was one of the guys who designed what's called the modulator, the cryomodulator. He was in a team that designed it's some unit on the system, the cell GC, chromatography, mass specs.
Okay.
So he came to the university and we started talking. And for some reason, I made a positive impact on this guy. So he went back to the company and told them, there's a young man at the University of Johannesburg, do everything to get him into your company. He will bring a lot of good. And so after about 2 years as a postdoc or 3, I was approached and offered a job by the managing director of separation science, Mr. Alexander Whaley.
Okay.
So I went to work with them for about 15 months. And then the University of Johannesburg Then the head of department then was Professor Ngila. She came and I was offered a job.
Back in academia?
Yeah, back to the university, which was better fit for me because I found out industry is great. It's good money, but very restrictive kind of environment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you for engaging with and talking about your work ethic, but what about your research per se? You mentioned that you are in biomining, but can you talk a little bit more about some of the key findings that you have so far and some of the key papers you have produced?
Not the key papers. What I consider as what I'm proud of, what I'm doing, is that so far from the research work I've done and the team that we have worked with, the people we've worked with, we have isolated and described over 300 novel compounds.
What does it mean, novel compound?
That's a compound that has never been discovered, that has never been described.
Okay.
So we're the first to say this kind of compound exists. It's found in this plant. It has this kind of biological activity.
Okay.
So we have discovered about 300, which is pretty decent novel compounds. We have found some unique biological activities, which I think some compounds that kill bacteria at really low concentrations, some compounds that are very good for cancer. And we found some plant extracts that actually have, I think the work I'm most proud of it's not, I don't think it's a wow.
Okay.
But I think that it's a research paper where we did work on a certain plant that is widely used in the African traditional medicine space across the continent. Okay. And used for almost every kind of ailment. It's called Piptadinastium africanum. Okay. And I wondered, why is this thing, I mean, it cannot be real. It's not the plant that cures everything. And I was
sorry, you use the technical name. What's the common name of that plant?
I don't know the common name of the plant. Okay. It has different names across the continent. So Nigerians call it one way, but the scientific name is Piptadinastium africanum. Okay. And even within Cameroon, where I harvested the plant, each tribal group has a name. Like the Betis, I can't remember what they call it, the Bamilikes. So I can't remember any of the local names. But the fascinating thing was that I was looking for why was this. But the thing that I found out was that for most of the diseases, be it cancer, be it bacterial infections and all of this, oxidative stress was in the pathophysiology of the disease. Okay. And this plant had unusual pro-oxidant and antioxidant activities, which was weird. So I was able to explain the widespread use of this plant, not because it attacks the disease per se, but through its pro-oxidant and antioxidant activities, it has an effect. It disrupts some sequence in the pathophysiology of many of these diseases that have no relationship at all. That's what I'm most proud of for me, but it's not very, people don't know it out there. So that's a bit of, that's how natural products is. But I believe that it will become one day something serious.
Yeah, talking about becoming something one day, how do you see yourself evolve in the future?
Oh, my dream has always been to get the Nobel Prize.
Why?
Yeah, we have to go for the best.
Okay.
I'm not afraid of failure. Absolutely not afraid of failure. I'm not ashamed to say I want to get the Nobel Prize. And my dad taught me excellence. He was one of few African researchers who had a Doctor of Science in chemistry, awarded by Durham Oxford University. Actually, I'm the one who used to handle his academic correspondence. So I was looking at his email box the other day. I keep getting emails from Durham University in the UK. But a Doctor of Science is basically after you have done years of research and you put together your body of research and it is evaluated, and if it is found to have made some significant contribution to science, then the university awards you what is called a Doctor of Science. So it's after a PhD. That's after years of research. So I'm going to have to beat my dad. If I have to demonstrate that my dad was a great man, then I have to do. So I'm going for the Nobel Prize. That's my dream. So it affects the choices I make. It affects the work I make. It affects the way So there's a part of my research that is fundamental, where I'm looking for something new and alternative ways of thinking of things. And there are a couple of projects that I'm working on because I have to make some significant contribution to chemistry. I haven't published those. I'm still thinking around them. I've observed some unusual results which I'm not able to explain yet fully.
Okay.
There's a part of my research which is your day-to-day research, discovering new novel stuff, finding new compounds and how they can be useful and what properties they bring about, biological, chemical, physical even. And then there is the part of my research which is geared towards getting some of this stuff to the market and making an impact.
Okay.
That's three main axes of my research. I think that this body of work, it's probably going to get me nominated. I mean, is there any challenge in being the first Black Nobel Prize in chemistry?
That would be interesting.
I really dream of that. That's my motivation.
Okay.
And when I get it, I will dedicate it to my dad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good for you. I wish for the best.
Yeah, thank you.
And you mentioned something very interesting for me because I'm a prof in strategy and entrepreneurship. You mentioned the ability of your research to translate into something commercializable, which will have an impact on our day-to-day life in medicine or biology. Do you have any example of some product or some findings that actually kind of made it to the market or has the potential to make it to the market?
Okay, on the biomining side, we do have, I'll talk about 2 or 3 projects that I think, the first one is we found a compound which has an unusual structure and it's a potent antifungal, like really potent.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that we're going to be able to get it out into the market as an antifungal agent. This fungi have a way of really messing up our lives. Food stuff, your body diseases and all these kinds of things. So we have a compound that is a potent antifungal. We've just kept it in the site, still waiting for the right context.
Okay.
One other project we worked on is biomining. Scopolamine is a naturally occurring alkaloid that it is used in the medical industry already. And a couple of the bigger pharmaceutical companies that actually produce it and sell. It's used in surgery, it's used for air motion sickness and a couple of other applications. We found a way which we have patented in Africa. The patent has been granted in Africa. The patent has been granted in the EU. The patent has been granted in the UK. The patent is under evaluation in India and I think 1 or 2 Asian countries and I think in Latin America as well. The patent is pending.
Okay.
But we've discovered a way of, how do I put it? Of producing a scopolamine-rich extract from waste product that comes from South African farms. Okay. South African industrial scale, so large-scale farming. And this process, we have approached one of the big 4. Okay. And we've sent them some of our samples, I've tested them and they say, look, this is good. They're getting what they want. Okay. And I work at the University of Johannesburg, the intellectual property issues, they pay my salary. So with the university, the University of Johannesburg has a business branch, should I call it? Okay. I must say, when it comes to business, I'm not very versed, which is one of the reasons why I'm visiting McGill to establish this. And
we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
So the university has approved some budgets for us to open a company that is going to try to take this to the marketplace. We already have a market, so we have a space in between where we need to be able to produce our product. We have produced it at the laboratory scale. We have produced it at a bit of a pilot scale kind of place, but we need to go really industrial. Yeah, and that's where we are at. That's one of the projects that is close to the market, for which we have a buyer, somebody who is interested in buying. And we've had interactions with quite a number of people, of venture capitalists who have been willing to put in money, and some are putting up to $100,000 worth of equipment just for us to be able to get stuff out of the ground. And they've done their market research and everything, and they were willing to go. But we are learning to speak what I call business speak, which is very different from academic speak. I think it's a new place for me. So that's one of the projects that is close to the market. The third one is we're targeting antimicrobial resistance.
What is that?
Basically, bacteria develop resistance. All the normal bacteria, not any superbugs, not any new bugs. Just bacteria develop resistance to antibiotics. So basically, they are able to identify that this is something that's going to kill it, and they develop mechanisms so as not to be killed by that. One of the mechanisms is what they call they develop multi-drug resistant pumps. They develop pumps that pump out the drug, because for a drug to kill a bacterial cell, it needs to accumulate to a certain concentration within the bacterial cell to provoke death or to cause the death of the bacterial cell. So the bacteria develop these drug-resistant pumps, which pump out whatever molecule or the antibiotic, so that there's never enough time for the antibiotic to accumulate in the bacterial cell and kill it. And so this is why you have to keep increasing the doses of antibiotics. And in antibacterial resistance, sometimes the scope of antibiotics you have to take, we now have extremely drug resistant. For example, if you use tuberculosis, you have drug-resistant tuberculosis, you have multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, you have extremely drug-resistant tuberculosis now in South Africa.
It's the same bacteria, but it has learned to actually avoid being killed by the drug.
Antibiotics. So I'll use the same. If you had to take a treatment for 6 months, now you have to take a regimen of 18 months.
Oh, wow. With the side effects.
Yeah, with all the side effects and the toxicity concentration. So we have found some compounds that actually inhibit this MDR pumps and reduce the amount of antibiotic you have to take significantly, enough for it to be commercially viable. And we've done some preliminary cytotoxicity tests that to see if it kills the human cell, and it's completely not cytotoxic, which is weird, at normal concentrations. And the amounts we add, just for you to understand, if you have 1 milligram per milliliter of antibiotic and you add 5 microliters of this compound, you reduce the amount of the antibiotic you need to kill the bacteria by significant amount, sometimes even 100 times the amount, depending on the bacteria you're dealing with. Because
so instead of having to take like
500 milligrams, you may need to take 50 milligrams, or you may need to take 5 milligrams.
Oh, wow.
That's just in vitro. We need to see what will happen when it's administered in vivo.
That can be groundbreaking.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. The search for MDR pumps is not novel, but finding something that is really not cytotoxic and which can actually inhibit the pumps this much it's interesting. Yeah.
So what are you waiting for to put it on the market?
Well, I need to be able to find a context, funding, and partners to actually do more extended tests, because we've done what we can within the limits of what we have. We've found alternative ways of making this compound, so we can make it in what is called, let me use in quotes, green. The way it was synthesized in the past, we've discovered, we've innovated greener synthesis, that is a solvent-free synthesis, so you don't need solvents, which is taking a step towards a sustainable production of the drug. And so I'm learning what it means to take something to the market. It's a different space, so that's what we're working on now. If we can get it to the market eventually, that will be good.
And from the conversation we had before, you also told me that you're also at UJ in a very stimulating environment with other profs being involved in very high-level discovery, groundbreaking discovery. Can you speak into that a little bit more?
Yeah, I landed in a department that was hungry for recognition. The colleagues I work with are unusual. It's a stimulating environment. In our department, it's if you don't publish, you are an outlier, kind of. We have some of our colleagues who have focused more on teaching, and they bring excellence to the teaching. That I must say.
Okay.
But we have a department. I've got colleagues who work hard. I've got Professor Nomgongo Piliswa. She joined. I was a postdoc when she was a PhD.
Okay.
When she started her PhD.
Oh, wow.
And by the time I came back as a senior lecturer, she was an associate professor. So in 5 years, she went from lecturer
PhD?
to full professor.
Oh,
and she's now what you call a Sachi chair. And this colleague of mine works hard. I've got colleagues, one Professor Luafemi, who publishes 25 to 30 articles, another hard worker, Professor Rotiba, Professor James Ramunja, and there's some younger staff members who are also prolific. Professor Lamini Langetlidle, there's Professor Soraya Malinga, there's Professor Alfred Müller, there's a couple of them who are brilliant scientists. We've got a young colleague of ours, Professor Banutile Makubela, who is also a very good, she's very, very prolific.
Okay.
But the thing that it's an environment where you want to work hard, you want to produce. We've got these engaging discussions. I've got a very good friend of mine who is Professor Mamo. And this guy his research is unusual. I keep telling him, when the world will discover what you're doing, his research is even more commercializable than mine.
Okay.
I got this colleague who's moved away now, Professor Patrick Ndungu, who he was a brilliant guy. You know, you talk with him and you are educated. You know, this kind of guys who have a bit of a breadth of knowledge.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what would you say is the recipe to have such a vibrant environment, a vibrant collection of researchers?
I don't know, but I know that the way the researchers were selected was for research ethic. But the thing about it is that you come into the department and you find yourself quickly in an environment where everybody's talking publishing, everybody's talking output, everybody's talking up raising funds, everybody's talking. And now the conversation is switching to commercialization.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So in terms of output, more or less in this university rankings, our Department of Chemistry is always first, second in South Africa for the last couple of years and very top in Africa. At some point, we're first in Africa. Okay. I don't know what exactly it is now, but at the University of Johannesburg, that Department of Chemical Sciences, we are prolific in, at the moment, we have over 250 postgraduate students.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We have about 40 academic staff and 22 support staff, more or less. I don't know if my figures are exact, but it's more or less those figures. We have over about 66 staff members. So it's quite a big department. And you will always find some funding. Okay. We've got some centers of excellence. There's a Center for Natural Product Research, for which I am the director. There's a Center for Nanomaterials Research, which Professor Rotiba is the director. There's a Center for Catalysis, which Professor Banutile Makubela is the director. Okay. So we've got some centers of excellence and we've got some very strong research groups. We've got a Sachi chair. It's an excellence for water, nano and water. So they work predominantly on water purification. South Africa is a water scarce country. So we have to do everything to preserve water and use it properly for an efficient use of water. So our department is strongest in the water space. Okay. Yeah. And then a little bit in the energy space, and then smaller in the biomedical space, which is where I operate. Okay. Yeah.
Interesting. You mentioned nanotechnology. Yeah. And I also know that your department is part of a cohort of department in South Africa that hosts the nanoscience and nanotechnology master program. Yeah. And you are part of the direction of the leadership of that program. Can you speak a little bit more into that?
Yeah, in about 2010, 2009, 2010, the South African government prioritized some initiatives around making South Africa relevant in the nanotechnology space. So they started a couple of initiatives, one to push out companies, another entity to operate in the space like what you call in the business world validation, some upscaling and preparing stuff to go to the market, and one that was to train the human resource with the expertise in nanotechnology, which is a Master's Nanoscience program.
Okay.
The Master's Nanoscience program is run by 4 universities.
Okay.
And 4 universities, University of Western Cape, which is the hub, where there's the managing administrator, the managing director.
Okay.
And then there's a hub at the one at the University of Johannesburg, the University of the Free State, and the University of Nelson Mandela University in the Eastern Cape.
Okay.
So between those 4 universities, we take top students from around the country. People apply, and it's a merit-driven course.
Okay.
And it's a fully funded program. The government gives about 1.5 million Canadian dollars per annum to run the program. So these 35, 40 students, I are trained with the objective of getting them to become entrepreneurs. The government really wanted the skill that will manage the industry. So they invested into research in nanotechnology, so that there's a lot of knowledge generation and application of nanotechnology in the manufacturing space, in the biomedical space, in the different spaces, right? To be able to drive the economy through the creation of industry startups that are operating in the nanoscience space. And then they wanted to train the human capital that will be able to understand the entrepreneurship and the science to make something very, very unique. And so we run that program. I am the manager at the UJ, or the director, or whatever the word is, but I handle the UJ hub. And then we have a steering committee that runs the program.
I'm very aware of what you're doing there, because I had the opportunity to actually fly to Johannesburg to attend the nanoscience conference in last December. And I was very amazed by the quality of the research and the quality of the project those guys are running. And I was like, those are very impactful research most of the time. Speaking about water sanitization, about energy, about bioscience, about even, I think one of the very interesting project was about health and immunization against transferable, sexually transmittable diseases. And I was so amazed that I really wanted to. But the question that I wanted to ask to everybody in the room was, why don't you translate your research into venture and make sure that those findings are out there to save life and have the impact it requires? Do you have any explanation?
We are kind of a young. South Africa is a young democracy, 30 years. We know the history of South Africa.
Yeah.
And I think it's growing in phases. There was a time when the government put in a lot of resources into developing Black excellence, let me use it, where they wanted Blacks to become academics. So there were scholarships for masters, for PhDs, and there was a lot built around funding. Now that is taken speed, and now the academia in South Africa is quite strong and very diverse. And now the emphasis is now taking this. So the government has a number of initiatives that are involved in taking the research to the market. So now that the knowledge is being generated, there's enough volume coming out that some of that should find itself into the marketplace. So now the emphasis is, how do we get this to the market? And there's been a number of initiatives that are not yet as successful as an Oxford, as a Silicon Valley. Those are the beacons, the big guys. But that's where we're moving. The Dobson Center in McGill, we've heard about what they do. And so we are moving there. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm here in Canada, in McGill, because McGill has done it, basically. You guys have been able to push out so many startups. How you guys have done it, we have to learn. The head of department, Professor Ramonja, the dean, Professor Anna Motiti, actually mandated me to get this information and find ways. And of course, the director of the program, Robbie Lindsay, whom you met, you know how passionate he is, but he's at the University of the Western Cape. To develop the marketing and to produce the appetite for risk in the young Black South Africans who have brilliant ideas, to get out there and try entrepreneurship. I mean, it's a space in which we understand there's a lot of, the failure rates are high, but we are now at that space where we need to get to the market. So that, I think that, I mean, there are success stories, but it's not common. It's not common knowledge. It's not the average person. You go out, you travel around, you meet the average young European student. They are studying, but they always have some business idea. They're always wanting to get to the market. I found it so much. Even in their language, they talk, they're trying to find, of course, many of them want to do tech startups, but you find it's common. I've not interacted a lot with students in McGill as yet. I hope I will in the future visits, but you find that the average, now that's something we need to bring to South Africa, where the average person thinks they can be entrepreneurs and understand that a failed venture does not mean you are a failure, basically.
Okay. Interesting. And you mentioned some success. Do you have any example in mind when you mentioned success from that program specifically? Oh
yeah, of course. Our big success, which you guys in the entrepreneurship world call our small unicorn.
Okay.
Our small unicorn is we've got a young man who graduated from the program, Atherton Borora. He emigrated to the UK. Sorry. He went to study in the UK. He found himself in Oxford University.
And after having
graduated from the Masters in Nanoscience program.
Okay.
And then the Masters in Nanoscience program, he learned about lateral flow devices. And he developed a lateral flow device, I think, that can diagnose 10 diseases, 10 disease markers.
Okay.
Markers for 10 diseases. But he developed some lateral flow device which was in the diagnostic space, but which was really successful. And he started a company, I think it's Hutano Diagnostics. And recently, I don't know for how much he sold it, but off the record is a couple of million. He just sold it to EDX Pharmaceuticals. The information is available online, but that is our biggest success story. It's just that he's the exception instead of it being the norm. We want it to become the norm. We want commercialization from our Department of Chemical Sciences, from the Faculty of Science at the University of Johannesburg, even from the university, because our Vice Chancellor, his vision is societal impact. He wants the research to have an impact in society. And for that to happen, commercialization is one of the things that will bring this impact. It's just one of the things, because if you can make a cheaper alternative, if you can make a better alternative for people to have a better life, I think he is very keen on that. And this leads us, and so just so you can understand some of the initiatives that we've taken, apart from the Masters in Nanoscience, we're also looking at the communities. You know, South Africa has an uncomfortable level of unemployment. And a lot of the historically disadvantaged peoples are more or less still disadvantaged. There's been some progress made. The government has put in a lot of efforts, NGOs, and a couple of people have put in a lot of efforts, but the divide, the gap is still very
large.
Yeah, it's too large. It's one of the largest in the world, between the wealthy and those who don't have. So at the University of Johannesburg, in the Department of Chemical Science, with a colleague, the Deputy HOD of our department, Dr. Matapelo Siopela, we came up with a community engagement, a community impact project called Chemistry in the Community. But we want to produce two main things. The first thing is we want the disadvantaged kids to become familiar with science in the environment. If you cut a grapefruit, I don't know if you guys have the grapefruit here.
Grapefruit, yes, we do.
Grapefruit is not it's not a grape. It's not a grape. Grapes are the small.
Oh, grenade. We may call it grenade. Inside of it, there are reddish.
It's like an orange. It's like an orange, but it's a big orange.
Yes,
If you cut that fruit, once you lick it, immediately it's sweet. But if you drop it for a while, it becomes acidic. The chemistry is ketoenol tautomerism. So there's a chemical that changes its form when exposed to air. So we want to get the kids in the communities, we want to take the chemistry to them, but not using hard chemicals, not using chemistry, but looking in the environment. When you take red cabbage and you squeeze it, it's pink. I don't know if you guys have it here in Canada, but there's a cabbage that is red. And you squeeze it, it has a chemical indicator. So if you squeeze lemon, in which is acidic, it goes colorless. If you put baking powder in it, it goes pink.
Oh.
So we've designed a series of experiments, or just come up with series that are related to what is happening around them.
So from day-to-day life, they can learn some chemical principle.
Understand chemistry.
Okay.
And it gives them confidence in what they do. That's the one part. The other part is that we want to drive, an effect we want to have is to drive entrepreneurship. So we want to tell them, you can look around, and we have some success stories. There's a young man called Chris Ntuli. He was a student of mine. He came from he was the first person in his family to get into university.
Okay.
And from his village, he'd never seen a lab before he got to the university. So it was a challenge, that knowledge gap is big, but he succeeded. So he formed a company called Young Brilliant Tutors. Okay. The name of the company doesn't really speak to what he does.
Okay.
But he learned how to make soap and detergents in the lab. And now he started a company where he makes soap and detergent and sells to the communities at very reduced price. And he learned how to make bread, and he makes cheap bread that is affordable, which is now in the supermarkets.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's starting to grow. But that was through our mentorship. Okay. We were not entrepreneurs, but we just wanted to give these kids an option. You can use the science, to find a need within your community and start meeting it. You don't need to go far to buy soap. You can buy soap from your neighbor, and it's good soap, and it's cheap, and it's affordable. So you're saving the community money. You're having a positive impact. So we just recently signed an MOA with the the Ministry of Education in South Africa, so that we can actually assist them in uplifting the levels of these people. So the effect we expect from those programs is that we'll produce young people who even if they may not be rich, they may not be wealthy, but who are assured in what they know, who understand what is happening around them, who can notice and see things. And when they will see, they will find gaps where they can provide a service or provide a product or provide something. And so we're stimulating an environment that will lead to more entrepreneurship and less dependence on government jobs, if I can call it that way. So we're serving the government and having some impact on society. So that's a bit, I don't know if I've communicated.
Totally, and congratulations for those initiatives that you were mentioning, and I do believe that they are very impactful on the ground. But as a prof in entrepreneurship and strategy, I know that it's not just about the technicality. Like, you teach them chemistry, but sometimes entrepreneurship is more about the mindset of the entrepreneur instead of the technical skill that he possesses. And my question is, how do you assess their mindset? Do you see them as risk taker and willing to actually pursue?
There's a reality in Africa and in South Africa, is that for many of the black students, usually, very often, more often than not, they are the first from their family to get to the university. And since they're from very disadvantaged backgrounds, there's huge pressure to quickly find a job. So I think many of them do not even have the option to achieve their full potential. And that already is a huge mindset block.
Are you talking about the black tax?
Yeah, it's a black tax. It's unofficially the black tax, and we know what it is. Well, you have to work, and even many of the blacks who immigrated to the West,
still about
that. You need to send money back home to take care of your family. It's a moral imperative. But apart from that, there's a lot of an absence of assurance, because any form of failure is immediately associated to the value of the person. So many kids even when you're teaching, one of the things I'm proud of about myself is that I'm never ashamed to ask a question. I don't care if people laugh. I don't care if people consider me ignorant. It's never too late to learn this. Learning is always an opportunity. I think I've amassed a significant amount of knowledge. If you laugh at me because I ask a stupid question, you have no idea what I know. I'm just adding to my bank of knowledge. And this I try to communicate to the students. But even in class, they will be scared to ask questions for fear of being laughed at by their classmates, or for fear of it being a stupid question or anything. So you try to encourage that. Then when you take it to this entrepreneurship space, you find just the very few choleric ones who will take that risk, who will go out there and do it. And if that mindset can shift and it becomes an environment where they understand that entrepreneurship is something probably that you will never get right at the first time. I don't know any entrepreneur who will tell you that they got it right the first time. The first thing just went. That's not what I've heard from most entrepreneurs. There is a tenacity aspect, there's a conviction aspect, there's a vision aspect.
And a resilience aspect.
It's resilience aspect, which I think is something that needs to come into the training, which is what we are trying to do, to get these students to say, look, entrepreneurship is tenacity, is resilience, is the ability to, once you know that what you have is something that can get to the market. I mean, we academics tend to invent stuff which nobody needs, which nobody is willing to pay any money for. That's the big part from the academics. But from the young kids, they have brilliant ideas and they actually see a need because they usually come with those ideas because they've noticed some lack and they're trying to address it. So the big problem is the black tax, I would say. The second problem would be just the fear of failure. That mindset that attaches failure as a matter of personal value, which it should not. Okay. I mean, you should not. I'm dreaming of getting a Nobel Prize. Chances, I calculated at some point what my chances are, looking at the number of chemistry researchers in the world, the growing number. I calculated the figure. And I think my chances were 10 to the minus 40.
Okay.
Yeah, 0.000000001. Yeah.
but still,
I'm not even giving up. I'm talking like I'm already guaranteed a Nobel Prize.
Okay.
It is still a chance. I'm not afraid of failure, but if that is the goal, I will definitely go further than if I never set the goal. So it means as a full professor of organic chemistry, I've gotten to the top of my career, if I can use that in quotes. For me, I've just started now. Now I can start doing the research that will impact the world and wow my colleagues who are in the field, but also
and get you to the Nobel Prize.
And get me to the Nobel Prize.
Okay.
So that's the mindset that I think the kids don't have. They're afraid that failure defines them. No, I think failure makes you. What you need to make sure that you choose is the right road. Fail along the right road. I describe my life usually, and you know this, as advance from one failure to another. I've had papers that have been rejected 15 times. You submit, you have done the science, but somehow you have not convinced people that this is. Then after that, it gets accepted. And then suddenly it becomes one of your most cited papers. Then you ask yourself, what's happening here? But
so he was worried to actually have those rejections because he had improved the paper to the level where it becomes one of the most cited papers.
Yeah, the better papers that you've produced. Like this best paper I'm telling you about, it got rejected with very, very strong language.
Okay.
If the reviewers were viewing this podcast, I would tell them thank you for that because it got me thinking.
Okay.
And making what I think was my best contribution to science. I think that will eventually show up as that. Yeah.
Thank you. And you also participate in different activities. You also mentioned your community engagement, but you are engaged in giving back to Cameroon in a certain form.
Yeah. And
you are one of the leaders of an Excellence Award. Yeah. Can you tell us more about that project?
Yeah, a couple of us who were influenced by Professor Fomum. We found that he's a man of integrity. He's a man of hard work. He was a man of excellence. Even in the lab, when we're doing research under his supervision, he was very, very particular. I'll use a simple example to illustrate. In natural product chemistry, when you discover one new compound, you actually have enough data for a paper in a good journal, in one of the top journals in our field.
Okay.
For my PhD, I got 49 new compounds.
49?
49.
Okay. So 49 papers.
It could have been 49 papers, but Professor Fomum made us put it in 7 papers.
Okay.
So you see his commitment to quality and excellence. He wanted that when somebody read a paper that he wrote, the person actually got knowledge, new knowledge. I think that's why his work, he got the DSc. So we started an Excellence Award in Cameroon to motivate young Cameroonians to say, look, this is a man who did it, who succeeded. He studied in Cameroon, went to get his master's in his first degree, in Furabe College in Sierra Leone, and then got his PhD from Makerere University in Kampala.
Okay.
Actually, when he started his master's, it was converted into a PhD. So he didn't do a master's. He didn't get a master's. He just has a first degree and a PhD.
Okay.
This happens in the Anglo-Saxon system here and there. So we started this Excellence Award inspired around his life and his discipline and his commitment to hard work and to academic excellence. And we decided to we started an excellence award that we call the Zacharias Tannee Fomum Excellence Awards in Cameroon, which happens every year. We started very timidly. The first year, because we usually have an award ceremony, we had about 400 applicants. We awarded 100. Okay. We gave 100 awards. But every year it has been growing in impact and competitiveness. Okay. This year we had close to 10,000 applicants. Oh, wow. In 2024. We're applying for this awards and we were only able to award 160 because we do our algorithm for awarding, for choosing is not only the marks you get, it's comparatively. So there's a relative. So if you've got 9 A's and 1 B or it's 17.5 on 20 as your total mark, and 100 of you have 17.5 on 20, then we'll start awarding those who have 19. Yes. And they are there. Yeah. So you becomes not only a matter of your excellence, they are excellent students, and we do get and it was very impressive. When you have 10,000 people who have decent marks from universities, from high schools, then that tells you about the intellectual quality of the country. And more people are subscribing. So we have these events where we have an academic, we bring in inspiring young people from around the world who give academic talks. We give also talks on human behavior and morality. And then we do the award ceremony. And last year, there were about 7,000 people present at the award ceremony. And it's growing because we're having a huge space problem now. We're already having people starting to ask questions about the awards for this year. So it's coming along. That's one of the ways we believe I think it will be called social entrepreneurship. In a way, in a sense, yeah. Yeah. So we are really struggling to...
we can actually call it social engineering because you try to re-engineer the way the society see and value excellence by promoting it and putting it out there so that people know that it exists and now thrive and try to actually get to that level. So yeah, social engineering can be a way of saying it.
And one of the things we are bringing in now is entrepreneurship, an award for entrepreneurship excellence. So we have these kids who didn't really make it in school or who are not in the academic field. And we are trying to encourage this excellence. So we have an entrepreneurship award. So you present your company, what you're doing, and we award some funds. It's not a lot, but for Cameroonians, you can pay your university fees for 1 year. And Cameroon fees in Cameroon are not too expensive. It's nothing like in Canada. I mean, it's just nothing, but it does help a lot. So we do we have now introduced an entrepreneurship award. So an excellence in entrepreneurship, the creativity of your idea, how much of it you've taken to the market. And of course, we have a research excellence award. So we have academic excellence, we have entrepreneurship excellence award, and we have research excellence awards. So we are trying to encourage this excellence based on the life of Professor Fomum.
Okay. And what's the vision, like the objective or the target? You said for yourself you have the Nobel Prize.
This Zacharias Tannee Fomum Excellence Award, we're going to beat the Nobel Prize. Sorry, Nobel Prize, we're coming for you. Okay. It will be an award as, again, like I said, I'm not scared of failure, but we want to make it one of the more coveted awards worldwide. In Africa, from Africa, for a world audience. So we're going to, you can get the prize from anywhere in the world, but we are aiming at it being something from Africa, in Africa. Or rather, to put it the other way around, in Africa, from Africa. Okay. Yeah, because the Nobel Prize is it's European. There should be the Zacharias, Alfred Nobel was the one who set up the prize. So the Fomum prize as well will come around.
Okay.
If you get it, yeah.
Thank you very much for presenting to us like the different project and initiative that you carry out. But you also recognize that you need help, especially on the entrepreneurial activity and teaching and how to actually train relevant entrepreneur. We saw that, okay, you give them the technicality in most of the domain, either from the master program through the academic or in the community with the engagement that you have. But how can we help you basically? And I think this is one of the reasons why you came to McGill.
Yeah, like I said, McGill has the Dobson Center, which I found out through you when you came to present, to give us a talk at the Nano School in 2024 December. And it is when you gave your talk that we began to realize what we do not know. We somehow thought that we had a more or less decent grip on entrepreneurship and how to get to the market. And when you did your presentation, ideation, validation, acceleration, and fundraising, we quickly realized how much we were not ready for what we thought was commercialization, and which is one of the reasons why I was here. Because if you see somebody who is doing something very well, learn. We want to partner with McGill, we want to partner with the Dobson Center for them to transfer some of their skills, and so that a lot of the research we're doing, probably not much of it will make it through to the market, but at least it's given a decent chance to reach the market, because we have got some people doing some really amazing stuff in the energy space, in the photocatalysis space, so if we can have some incubation of an incubator, if it makes sense. So we will have to develop an incubator. We cannot be eternally dependent. At some point, we'll become a junior partner of McGill and the Dobson Center, but we need help setting up our streamlining towards the marketplace.
And do you have an idea of the baby steps to actually get that?
Of course, we had a meeting with the Dobson Center leadership, and we're gonna get them come over. We're starting with our nanoscience program, but we hope it's a bit of a challenge because we saw that the Dobson Center is not overstaffed, but it's a dedicated team that has had huge impact, I must say.
Yeah, they are very impressive. They turned in 5 years, they went from a fundraising capacity of 400 million to 4 billion today. So they 10x in 5 years. Yeah.
That's the 10x, like you said. That's the new word I learned yesterday. But that's the kind of thing we want. And they've graciously agreed to come along with us. Of course, we did engage with MasterCard, Professor Adi, and we're hoping that this initiative will bring out some serious entrepreneurship from South Africa and eventually from Africa. Because if we learn the ropes, then we can do some basic training, and then when we have some maturer entrepreneurs, they can find their ways into some of the more advanced incubation centers, Silicon Valley, Dobson, the Oxford, and
the Stanford, and the Harvard, the Mesh, and all those,
all these guys. So these are things we're discovering exist. You might read about them in the news here and there. You see them on LinkedIn here and there, but you never really know. You just never really know until you actually sit down and then you realize that it's a whole different ecosystem. So that's what we're here. We're really here to learn, and we already the meetings have been very, very pedagogic. Where my knowledge about entrepreneurship has 10x.
Okay.
And I don't think I've even started my learning journey. Like I told you yesterday, I would really want to do the lean program and go through it with some of my ideas. Why not?
Okay.
It's never too late to start.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so that's more or less what the Department of Chemical Sciences, the Faculty of Science at University of Johannesburg will expect out of this collaboration.
Okay.
To bring innovation and entrepreneurship out of the research that goes on at the University of Johannesburg.
Okay. Thank you, Derek, for those very interesting insight on what's going on in South Africa and your different research project, and also your different commitment, community engagement, and project in Cameroon and all of that. But if you had to say one word to a young, let's say academic or a young student today in order to encourage him to pursue his full potential, what would you say?
What I'm going to say is going to be a bit controversial, but if you don't find somebody you want to please outside of yourself, I consider that in our generation, self-gratification is the worst curse for an academic, for a human being. People have become more and more selfish. I define selfishness as, what is a thief? A thief is somebody who wants to acquire something without paying the price. At the cost of who? Another person. They think only about themselves. Who is a rapist? A person who wants pleasure without thinking about whether the other person is getting any pleasure. And so I consider selfishness and self-centeredness as the worst curse of our today's generation. If I want to do good, if I want to make somebody else happy, then I can work hard. I can go beyond myself. But if the person I want to satisfy, I want to make happy is myself, what can I achieve? What will I achieve? I read somewhere, and I'm not sure if this is that, the most successful businesses have always been those that have met a basic human need. I don't know if you guys are in the world of, but if it was started uniquely and only for the sake of money, they usually profit, their success is. But if at the base of the business, there's the pushing desire, there's an altruistic, let me use that word, even though I don't really like it in this context, there's an altruistic push. There's the desire to do good for somebody else. Those businesses have usually succeeded and gone beyond one generation and succeeded. So the thing I would tell the student, find somebody you want to please, and you will go beyond yourself and you'll become a great person. That's the way I see it. That's just me. I don't know if that's what I say. It's going to be very controversial.
No, it's perfect. I think it's quite relevant indeed, and completely fitted with the generation where we live in now. So yeah, thank you very much for that. Okay.
In a generation where it's all about do you, and you is producing.
Actually, to comment on that, I teach a very interesting course at McGill, the social context of business class. And there we actually study capitalism, not only its origin, but also its effect on society and the psychology of people. And we see that, that is because you said do you, it's a very capitalistic way of doing things. Do yourself because of your self-interest and seek your self-interest. And we realize through different philosophers like Emile Durkheim that capitalism can actually have a very destructive effect on people's mind and the society in general. And by cutting ties and being focused only on you. And maybe, as you said, it's time to actually look beyond ourselves to actually be able to create something bigger and better. And I think also from South Africa, we have a very interesting philosophy, the Ubuntu mindset, to actually get people to define, at least see their worth by the amount of the value they can produce to other people. Can you speak a little bit on that as well?
It's just that. It's simply that Ubuntu. That's it. It explains itself. It's basically in the way I understand it, because it's you never really know. I would put it simply, not for my good alone, but my brother's good. Basically, altruism. It's taking away the self-centeredness, basically, trying to take away the self-centeredness. Doing things not only for my good, but for the good of those around me and for the good of the country and for the good of Africa. Doing something not because of necessarily what I will get out of it, but the good that it can do to us. It's more, that's the way I understand it. That's my interpretation of Ubuntu. Whether it is what those who coined the word wanted, but I think that is what it is, and that's the noble side of it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Derek, for the time and for those very insightful comment and conversation. I hope you will succeed, and
I
hope
will
to
succeed.
see you.
I'll come back here when I get my Nobel Prize.
Oh wow! Thank you. So yeah, we will be waiting for you, and I hope we do not wait too long, because this takes some resources, and it has a due date, or at least we cannot run forever. So do fast.
Just wait. Just watch this space.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Derek.
Okay, thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome.